This New Yorker podcast is supported by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully, so you can be confident that you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/political scene. This New Yorker podcast is supported by Indeed. Are you hiring? With Indeed, you can post a job in minutes, set up screener questions, then zero in on your short list of quality candidates using an online dashboard. Get started today at Indeed.com/podcast.
This is The Political Scene, a weekly conversation with New Yorker writers and editors about politics. It's Thursday, April 26th. I'm Dorothy Wickenden, executive editor of The New Yorker. On Tuesday morning, during a photo op with French President Emmanuel Macron, Donald Trump called the 2015 nuclear accord between Iran and the world's 6 major powers insane and ridiculous. He said that if he goes ahead and renounces the accord and Iran resumes uranium enrichment, they're going to have big problems, bigger than they've ever had before. That afternoon, after meeting with Macron, Trump struck a different posture, indicating that the U.S. and Europe could have an agreement among themselves very quickly, as he put it. On Wednesday, President Macron gave an impassioned address before both houses of Congress in which he explained France's position.
Iran shall never possess any nuclear weapons. Not now, not in 5 years, not in 10 years, never. But this policy should never lead us to war in the Middle East. We must ensure stability and respect sovereignty of the nations, including that one of Iran, which represents a great civilization.
At the end of Macron's visit, he sounded, though, a little deflated as he talked to reporters, saying it was his view that the president probably will decide to get rid of the deal on his own for domestic reasons. Referring to Trump's decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, he said such reversals in U.S. policy can work in the short term, but it's very insane, he said, in the medium to long term. Lauren Collins joins me from Paris to discuss Macron's efforts to coax Trump and the Republican Party into seeing major policy issues his way, and what the French think about their president and our own. Lauren, welcome.
Thanks, Dorothy.
The consensus here pretty much is that Macron, after all the hand-holding and hugs of Tuesday, issued a pretty sharp rebuke to Trumpism on Wednesday. Is that how it looked to you over there?
That was pretty much the consensus from kind of the pundit class here, that Macron had gone to America. He'd kind of palled around with Trump, but gotten a little bit more serious on the final day, and then come home, having positioned himself as a fairly prominent player on the international stage, if nothing else, but really having extracted nothing of value from the visit, which wasn't necessarily to be expected. So I think with kind of the public and journalistic classes, the visit went over fine. Of course, his political opponents at home all had something to say about it, going kind of from left to right. The Socialist Party, which he defected from to start his own movement En Marche, criticized him for Trump's praise, actually, of the kind of hardline immigration bill that Macron is trying to push through at home. Then proceeding to the middle, the Republicans, who are the center-right party here in France, just kind of said, yeah, well, nice photo ops, but what do you have to show for it? And then proceeding even further to the right with the National Front, one of their prominent members kind of tweeted, and their party line was, that puts an end to Jupiter, which is the kind of exalted presidency that Macron has been trying to create.
A year ago, Trump and Macron had that famous death grip handshake when they first met in Brussels. Macron said afterward, that's how you ensure you're respected. You have to show you won't make small concessions, not even symbolic ones. So tell us how you think he came to take the measure of Trump.
I think it was just important to him, even on an image making level, that he wasn't owned by Trump in the way he'd seen, happen with some other handshakes. But no, I mean, the thing that Macron gets out of this, even if he doesn't really manage to move Trump an iota on any of the important policy disagreements, which are really the environment, Iran, and North Korea, it's just that Macron becomes Trump's sort of primary conduit to Europe. Of course, during the Obama administration, that was very much Merkel's job. Theresa May is another candidate, but she doesn't seem to have any, chemistry with Trump. Both May and Merkel are, it goes without saying, women, and we know that might pose a problem for our president. They're also more senior than Trump. And so something that I think has been a little bit under-remarked upon in this relationship between Trump and Macron is just that it goes both ways. I mean, Macron has plenty of reasons to think that maybe Trump is a little bit malleable. Just giving Trump a little bit of credit here, which is perhaps undue, but maybe Trump looks at Macron and thinks, well, he's the new guy too. I might as well try him out. Why not?
Well, and Macron must have learned quite a bit from Angela Merkel's unfortunate inability to disguise her disdain for Trump when she paid her own visit to the Oval Office, and really, openly grimaced when he said they had a lot in common. So he's decided on quite a different tack.
Yeah, I mean, what's something he's done that's interesting is he doesn't hesitate to state pretty starkly his differences with U.S. policy, but he never criticizes Trump by name. I mean, he came pretty close in his address to Congress to criticizing Trumpism. But as far as Trump, I mean, we know with Trump, it's personal and it's ego and it's his skin. And I think Macron has just very strategically been sure to flatter Trump, the person, even while expressing his disagreements with Trumpism, the doctrine.
Republicans in general seem to have learned to love France again. And I was remembering this morning, remember how they mocked John Kerry in 2004 by sneering that he looks French?
Re-eating. Re was kind of the second worst thing after water skiing, if I remember properly.
And Tom DeLay, who was then the Republican majority leader of the House, used to start his speeches to supporters by saying, hi, or as John Kerry might say, bonjour.
Yeah, that was a big laugh line.
And then also, let's not forget that Macron did an exclusive interview with Fox News on Sunday in which he stressed his similarities with Trump as being another outsider bent on disruption and draining swamps, and someone else who made a fortune in business and won the presidency.
And just a little fact check here. I mean, Macron is not at all an outsider of the sort that Trump is. I mean, he's a pretty pure product of the French system. His outsiderness is that he started his own political party, which was certainly a break from precedent. But it's a little bit of a stretch on his part to try to find those points of commonality with Trump.
This New Yorker podcast is supported by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/political scene. Equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030. This New Yorker podcast is supported by the Great Courses Plus, the streaming service created for people who love to learn. Gain political insights, explore human behavior, or discover great works of art from the world's best professors and experts, with unlimited access to watch and listen to thousands of lectures in virtually any topic. For a limited time only, the New Yorker podcast listeners will get the first month free. Sign up now at thegreatcoursesplus.com/New Yorker.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, my colleague Jeffrey Toobin talks with Stacey Abrams, a Georgia politician who's running to be the first black female governor in American history.
President Obama, Deval Patrick, Doug Wilder are all emblematic of what is possible. But for me, there is absolutely no clear roadmap to this.
That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen.
So I want to talk to you about a book you wrote a couple of years ago about you learning French, and that was part of your romance with the man who became your husband. And I wondered, as someone who studied in idioms in both languages, what do you make of Macron's English? He did speak to Congress in quite good English.
It's pretty staggering that he takes the risk to do that, honestly. First of all, I interviewed François Hollande, who's the former French president. We discussed that a little bit. And Hollande kind of questioned Macron's decision to, first of all, do the interview with Fox News and, more importantly, to do it in English. I mean, these are kind of situations where presidents are weighing their every word, and it's a pretty big kind of risk of Macron to go in and figure that he can pull it off. He's a guy who loves risk. He quit the government and started his own political party and won the presidency a year later. And so I think for him, it's pretty small potatoes to miss a word here or there in English.
How is he viewed at home? There seem to be sort of widely divergent responses to him, and his poll ratings aren't very good at the moment.
I think his reputation at home is very much still in the making. I mean, he's 1 year into a 5-year term, and he's right now in the midst of trying to push through a reform. It's basically to the retirement benefits of the railway workers, which is historically a pretty, intransigent group in France. And that's ongoing. There have been 2 out of every 5 days are rolling strikes, and that's supposed to last until June. But I think that public support for the strikers is maybe at about 45%, and it's been diminishing. So, so far Macron, his government hasn't budged. The strikers haven't budged. But, as of now, it hasn't turned into the kind of debacle for him that it has for previous governments. He's also trying to push through an immigration law that's significantly harder line than what he campaigned on. And so, he's certainly getting some criticism for that. But again, it's not something that's really mobilized public opinion tremendously so far.
Well, let me interrupt you for 1 second on that. Why is he doing that? Given he won the election on taking a more moderate stance on that issue, why now is he pushing the harder line?
I think it's pretty obviously a measure to kind of placate the harder right in France and to keep its supporters in the fold, and to kind of the far right was not neutered by any stretch of the imagination, but damaged and at least temporarily contained by Macron's not crushing but commanding victory over Le Pen in the second round of the election. So anyway, I think the idea is to do that before the National Front can come back to life.
Macron, I want to talk for a second about climate change. It was interesting when Macron talked about it in his speech. He borrowed Trump's language from his campaign about making America great again, and it seemed kind of a mischievous sort of twist, but also took pretty hard aim at his policies on global warming. How do you think he went about that?
Well, so that Make Our Planet Great Again thing was a meme that Macron kind of unfurled almost a year back, I guess, on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, it showed that he was somebody who was going to be a little bit pugnacious, who wasn't afraid to tweak. And that's a side of Macron that I think is pretty fascinating to people. And even when he was answering the questions he went to do an event and answer questions from students. And Macron said to the student, you don't always have to follow the rules. That's bullshit. So just to kind of go back to your question first about him deciding to speak English. I mean, that's not at all the tone, the register that Macron speaks in French. It's casual and it's vernacular and it's somewhere on the scale of not super polite. I'm not sure whether he kind of miscalibrated the sort of rudeness level of that word in English or not. But you like it a little bit when he shoots from the cuff. I mean, I don't think that damages him. Anyway, with his Make Our Planet Great Again campaign, and more seriously, his engagement with environmental policy. I think that's one of his big priorities in international diplomacy. And, that's been kind of the conversation that he's been trying to have with Trump from the very beginning. Macron doesn't have a ton to lose in coming to Washington, being feted by Trump, being treated as kind of an international heavyweight, and pleading his case. And, everyone knows it's a long shot with Trump, that he's unpredictable and somewhat implacable. And so I think for Macron to just take a risk, give it a shot like he has on a lot of things, and see where it goes is actually not an unclever approach on his part.
And putting himself forward as a major force in Europe, as the next generation.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's not just doing this with Trump. I mean, he's kind of positioning himself as this freelance fixer in a number of hotspots and kind of conflicts and disputes. When the Lebanese prime minister went sort of MIA in Saudi Arabia, it was Macron who said, come to Paris, let's talk. And he really inserted himself in that drama. So I think this is fairly typical of what he's been doing, and that, even though Trump is his most high-profile target, this is a role that he's very consciously attempting to carve out for himself.
Okay, thanks so much, Lauren.
Thanks so much, Dorothy. It was great talking to you.
Lauren Collins is a staff writer and the author of When in French, Love in a Second Language. This has been The Political Scene from The New Yorker. You can subscribe to this and other New Yorker podcasts by searching for The New Yorker in your podcast app, and find more political analysis and commentary on NewYorker.com. Feel free to rate and review The Political Scene on Apple Podcasts. This podcast is produced by Alex Barron and Hannah Walentz for NewYorker.com. I'm Dorothy Wickenden.
This New Yorker podcast is supported by Indeed. When it comes to hiring, you don't have time to waste. You need help getting to your short list of qualified candidates fast. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screener questions, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. And when you need to hire fast, accelerate your results with sponsored jobs. New users can try for free at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms, conditions, and quality standards apply.